Joseph. I'm a developer from Harare, Zimbabwe, and today I'm gonna do a walkthrough of my portfolio website. I'm gonna show you how to develop this portfolio website from designing, development, and then hosting. So now, without further wasting your time, let's go through the portfolio. So this is the home page, and then it has got some blogs, and then at the bottom here we have a mailing list. So you can just put in your name and your email and subscribe to my mailing list. I also have a blog page. So this is the page for all the blogs that I have, and then individual blog pages as well. And if we go back to the home page again, as you can see, you can also schedule a meeting with me from here. It's taking its time. So you can schedule a meeting with me. So this one is powered by Calendly. So yeah, you can use it. And yeah, basically that's it. But for this walkthrough, we're going to be using a blog that I've written. So this is the blog of the whole process. So before I developed this website, I already had a website that I developed in 2018 when I was still on internship. So I wanted to change the website because when I developed it, I didn't change it, not even a single day. So I decided to buy a new domain. I was using a local domain in Zimbabwe. We use .co.zw, but I wanted to use a domain like .dev or .com. So I just decided to buy a .com domain, and this is the one that I'm using now. And yeah, basically that was the old website. And then for the new website, I obviously started with the design. So every time when you want to develop something that is nice, you obviously need to design it. But I can just start designing from Figma. There are some people who can start designing sites from softwares like Figma, Photoshop, especially graphic designers, because that's their job, and I think it's quite easy for them to start from there. But for most developers like me, we want to start from a pen and paper. So this was the first design that I designed on a book, and then after that I went to Figma, and then it was sort of a translation of that design that I had on the book to the actual Figma file. So let's go to Figma and then see the actual file. And yeah, this was the design. As you can see, there are some differences between the design that I have on the Figma and then the final website. Like the first difference is that I no longer have this button on my website. So I decided to move this toggle, the dark mode toggle, to an accessibility component. So I developed an accessibility component that's used to toggle things like the dark mode. You can toggle monochrome. So if you go to the website here, this is the toggle button that I'm talking about. I can switch to dark mode from this one, switch back to light mode. I can turn monochrome on so that everything on the website is black and white. Turn it off, turn hue on, do some text alignments. So I think this one is very useful for maybe people, so some Arabs. Most Arab people read from right to left. So uh, if you have your website with everything right aligned, I think it will be quite easier for them to read. So you can toggle that from this accessibility menu. And yeah, so most of the things changed, like uh, these links. I think right now they don't have icons, they're just some simple text and then some content, but most of the things remained as they are on the Figma file. So after doing the design on the Figma, the next step was development, which was the actual coding of this portfolio website. But obviously, before you start development, you need to pick a tech stack, like the things that you're going to be using. If it's a big application, you need to pick the things that are going to be using for the front end, for the back end, the databases, all that stuff. You also need to think about hosting. Are you going to be targeting people in your country only? Is it going to be a very global project? So all those things will obviously change the things that you're using. So like if you have customers that are distributed globally, let's say it's a big application, it makes sense to host your application on the cloud, maybe using something like GCP or something like AWS or Microsoft Azure. So yeah, so I decided to go with React for the UI. So I'm using React here, and then there's Next.js to make sure my website is very fast. So I like how Next.js is introduced on their website. They say it's a framework for production applications, which for me is quite true because there are a lot of things that Next.js is doing for you, like code splitting, optimizing images, uh, there are a lot of things, server-side rendering that also improves your SEO because the traditional React application that we're using a technique called client-side rendering rendering on the browser, but to the server it just see them as a bunch of JavaScript, and uh, most of the crawlers I think some time ago we're not able to crawl JavaScript. I think even up to now, most of them are not able to crawl JavaScript, but Google is able to crawl and pass some JavaScript. So Next.js, you generate HTML files, and then Google crawlers and other Bing crawlers or whatever other crawlers that are there can easily find your website. And it's very easy to cache HTML content because that's just static content. It's different from dynamic content. And then for styling, I'm using Tailwind CSS. So right now, this is my go-to framework for it's a library. It's a go-to library. Sorry, I meant library. So this is my go-to library for styling, and then I'm also using CSS modules to separate my styles from the code in the components. So usually when people use CSS modules, they're trying to make sure that there are no name collisions in the classes because with React, if you, for example, have a button component with a class called, let's just say test, and then you give a background of red, and then there's another component that also has the same button called that also has a that also has the same class called text test. Those classes might override each other. So, but if you use CSS modules, classes will be scoped to the component that is using that cell. And then for all the blogs that I have on my portfolio, they're coming from the Dev2 API. So integrated with the Dev2 API, and then I get all the blogs from there. And then my mailing list is powered by MailChimp, and then hosting is on Vercel. Hosting on Vercel is very easy. Just a few clicks of buttons, and then boom, you're done. Production, a very optimized website. And then the source code is obviously hosted on GitHub. And then for animations, I'm using a library called Framemotion. So Framemotion is quite easy to use as well. And then I'm also using TypeScript. So to add some types to JavaScript code. Sorry. And these are some sample code snippets from the portfolio. So right now, let's head over to VS Code and then see the actual code. But maybe before we go there, let's go to GitHub, and this is the repository for the portfolio. And the cool thing about this portfolio is that it's open source, so anyone can go to this link and then start the repository, uh, fork it, clone it, whatever you want. But if you want to host something like this, so if you want to clone the repository and then change some images, name and stuff, uh, make sure that you read the license first, because in the license there are some things that I mentioned there that uh, like you don't have to just copy this portfolio and then change my name, put in your name, change my images, put in your images, and then post it as if it's your own. At least you need to give some credit, and also you need to uh, change some other things so that it looks unique. It doesn't look exactly uh, like my website. And yeah, so let's go to VS Code, and in VS Code, this is the whole repository here. So let's start with this tsconfig file. So the thing that I wanted to show you here is this path property, which is an object. So what I'm doing here, let's just go back, let's just go to the components. Let's pick in one of these. So if you go here, these components, the way I'm importing them from, it's like I'm importing them from a folder called it components/UI. But in order for VS Code to know that, to know what I mean by it components, I have to tell it from here, from this tsconfig file, so that whenever someone says it components, use the components folder. Whenever someone says it cells, use the cells folder, so that is very easy to import files. And then the next thing is the Tailwind config file. So when you install Tailwind CSS, it gives you this configuration file so that you can customize some things. Like if you want a different font, you can do it from here. If you want to include some plugins, like on this website I'm using a typography plugin, I can do that from here. And then packet.json file, this one is not very unique. And then the other one is the next config file. So the first thing here that I'm setting up are the redirects. So if you, for example, go to the root of my website and say /schedule, let's just go there to see how it behaves. So if you go back here and say /schedule, so if I want someone to schedule a meeting with me, I can simply send them this link. This is not a separate page, by the way. So I want you to look at the URL when I hit enter. So when I hit enter, it changes the URL to the home page URL, and then with the query parameter action and the value called schedule. So from the hero section, I'm listening for that query parameter. If it's set to schedule, I give you a pop-up of this calendar widget so that you can schedule a meeting with me from here. And that is set up from that next config file. Here, when you go to /schedule, it redirects you to the home page with query parameter action set to schedule. And then there's some other things like for the progressive web applications. And then there's also this one for images. So because my images that I'm using for the blogs are coming from, because my images are coming from the dev2 API, I have to put the domain dev2 here. But dev2 hosts their images on Cloudinary, so I have to put the domain for Cloudinary so that Next just knows how to optimize these files. And then this config file. To be honest, I'm not sure of everything that's going on here. I just got it from some questions on GitHub. I was trying to make sure that if I toggle between light and dark mode on development, uh, it changes instantly. It wasn't working as expected. So this config file, this OPEC configuration is helping with that. It's specifically for Tailwind. So I think it was a bug. It's a bug in Tailwind that prevents it from that. And then this is the configuration file for the sitemap. The license, you have to read this license if you want to contribute or do anything with this repository. The cypress.json file, this is for Cypress, the environment variables, and we go to the utils directory. So this directory is hosting some reusable utility functions, like this one called format date. So I'm using this one to format all the dates on my portfolio website so that uh, they are all similar. And the styles directory also has a global CSS file that is overriding some other things like the fonts, global fonts and stuff. So it's not a lot of things that are stored in this file. And then The public folder is the one that's usually used for static assets like the images, the videos, the fonts, the favor icons, the manifest files for like PWS. You can put you can put them in this public folder, and then we have a pages folder, and then every page on my website is coming from this pages folder. Like the home page is this index folder. Then the blog page, we have the main blog page, and then this is dynamic for all the individual blog pages that I have for all the individual blogs. I mean, and then I have this sleep folder. This one has got the code for Google Analytics to set up Google Analytics on every page. And then the hooks folder, this one has got the custom hooks like this one, could use them. So this is the hook that I'm using to toggle between light and dark mode, or to get the active theme. And the cypress folder, so this one is not, yeah, it is not on the repository now, it's not on GitHub now, but maybe sometime when you go back to GitHub, it will be populated. I'm trying to write some end-to-end tests for this portfolio, so when I'm done with that, this one will be on GitHub again. And then the last folder is the components folder, which is also the most important folder here. So on the components folder, the way I'm doing it is I've got these three main folders here. So for all the small components like the buttons, the text, or the typography, the pages, the boxes, all those small components, I'm hosting them in this UI folder. So this is a folder that has got all those small components. Like if we, for example, go to the button, so there's a tsx file which has got the TypeScript for that button, and this is the code. And then for styling, like I said, I'm not using Tailwind CSS, but as you can see from my styles here, I'm not choosing any Tailwind classes. So because I wanted my components to be quite clean, so all my styles are in in this file, which is a CSS module, and I just import that file from the button component, and then use the styles from there. And this approach is quite clean because my button component is not polluted with some Tailwind classes, because if you are using Tailwind, it's very easy to have a single component with 20 classes, because Tailwind is a utility. It's a utility library. It doesn't give you things like what you get in Bootstrap. So in Bootstrap, if you just give a class of .btn, you're getting a button that is tailed already. But with Tailwind, you have to do that on your own. It gives you utility classes. I think the same mental model that was used to develop Tailwind is the same mental model that was used to develop React. It doesn't give you a lot of things, so you have to construct things on your own. So for a button, you need to give it some padding, you need to give it some line height, or maybe you need to change the display to inline block if it's something else. So yeah, that is how you use Tailwind, and it's quite same across all the components. We have the main tsx file, and then the css modules file, and then to create like big sections like the hero section, the about section, I have to combine these small components. So for that, I'm using this sections folder. So if you go to this sections folder, like if you go to about right now, and go to the top of the file, as you can see, it's importing those small components and then combining them here to form this about section, which is this one. Let's go back here, which is this one, and it's the same thing for the hero section. And then the other folder that I also have is the common folder. So I'm using this one to host some common components like the logo, the navigation, the menu, the layout, the footer, the sidebar, the subscription form. And one other component that I want to emphasize here is the page component. So this is the page that is doing most of the SEO stuff for this portfolio. So if we go here, as you can see, I'm importing the head component from Next.js to, in order for me to inject some things like the titles, the description, the open graph tags, and stuff, so that every page on this portfolio uses this component to get these attributes. So if we, for example, go to the home page, let's go to the home page here. As you can see, the parent component here on this home page is that page component, and then I'm passing the title, the description, the URL, the keywords, the image, the canonical URL as props on this page, so that get passed down to that main component. And the other section, the other folder that we have under components is the blog. So this has got some components that are specifically for the blog page. And yeah, basically that's it. So if you guys have got any questions that you have about this portfolio, you can share with me those on the comment section. And